The NFL draft is just days away, which means it is time for one last Thick-Manig mock draft. Today, I will let my co-host have the luxury of getting the odd picks. I'll handle the evens, and it's going to be a little bit chalky at the start, but we'll try and mix things up towards the end of the draft. You know how it goes. So Tristan, take us away. Who are the Titans selecting first overall, and why is it Cam Ward?
Well, with the Titans, Cam Ward, he's calling Tony Pollard the best running back in the NFL. He's saying the Titans have the best wide receiver room in the NFL. It is clear that he is going to be the first overall pick. They canceled all their workouts with other high-end draft picks that are supposed to go in the top 5, so there's no point in even discussing anyone else at this point. It is less of a secret than the Trevor Lawrence draft.
The pick is in.
The pick is in. It is in already.
It's in already. Equally as chalky, in my opinion, the Cleveland Browns are taking Travis Hunter. Their defense needs some help. Their offense needs a lot of help. Hunter can be the wide receiver 1 on that team. Judy's a good player, sure, but he's much more of a wide receiver 2. Hunter, elite player at 2 positions, helps the Browns out. I don't think Abdul Carter's a pick. The injury concern's too great. Hunter, you're headed off to Cleveland.
I think both the Browns, I agree with you, and the Giants, they're not going to pass up on the opportunity to draft 2 of the 3 best players in this draft class, whether it is Travis Hunter, whether it is Abdul Carter. Neither one of them are going to draft Shedeur Sanders in the top 5. I think they value these 2 players' talents a lot higher. I do think the Giants are going to go Abdul Carter. I think in an ideal scenario, because it would likely help their roster more, they desperately want the Browns to pass on Travis Hunter in favor of Abdul Carter or a quarterback. But the Giants front office also has a history of taking who's the most popular pick publicly, whether that was Thibodeau and Evan Neal, whether that was Malik Neighbors last year. It kind of worked out in different ways each time around, but I do think they take Carter.
Yeah, Thibodeau and Neal were so bad you got to draft Malik Neighbors. They've also got a habit of taking their biggest need at those picks. So Shedeur Sanders is by no means off the board. You just don't want to tap him because you're a Giants fan. That is where the draft really starts, in my opinion. We'll have to wait and see how that pick turns out.
I also think they could trade down.
Who are they going to trade down with, though? Are the Eagles going to jump up, give them A.J. Brown, and then add Abdul Carter and just terrorize whoever the Giants quarterback is for the next decade? That'd be pretty fun. I'd enjoy that.
That's the bigger problem with a lot of these teams saying, oh, they could just trade down to get draft picks. Who is trading up for it? Maybe there's a team that's in love with Abdul Carter like the Texans were with Will Anderson when they drafted Stroud and then still traded up for Anderson.
Yeah, the Browns are going to trade back into the 3rd overall pick and get both Hunter and Abdul Carter. A brilliant move and roll with Kenny Pickett as their QB week 1. The Patriots, I no longer think they have as pressing of a needed wide receiver as they did for our first mock draft. I would have had Ted McMillan going here if not for the addition of Stephon Diggs and learning a little bit more about Booty and Bourne. 2 of their more premier receivers who are often overlooked. They need to keep Drake May on his feet. They need to give him protection. They need to give him Will Campbell. I don't buy the Mimbu hype. I don't buy the stuff about Campbell's arms seriously holding him back. He played great against NFL players in the SEC the past 3 years. He will be just fine in the pros.
I tend to agree. If the Patriots are sticking and picking there, I don't feel like they're going to go defense, and I feel like they're going to look to protect Drake May and then maybe add an offensive weapon in threat with their 2nd round and day 2 picks. At 5 overall, Mason Graham has been the chalk pick all season long. I don't think that's the direction the Jaguars are going to go in. Adam Schefter recent reports that around the league, the Jaguars are a wild card. No one really has a great idea of who they're going to go with. And I think with bringing in an offensive head coach, wanting Trevor Lawrence to be that top-tier quarterback for them, drafting Brian Thomas last year, I think they're going to add Tyler Warren in the draft, dominate and operate over the middle of the field. You can use them in dynamic ways in the red zone, giving them another piece to that offense.
I think you are higher on Tyler Warren than you should be. He is not one of the blue chip guys in this draft, in my opinion. Depending on what you want your tight ends to do, he's not even as good as Colston Loveland in some areas, but he is still a better option than Tedrow McMillan there. If you have your heart set on them going offensive skill player, they're probably not going Genty. They've got 2 decent running backs in Etienne and Bigsby there, so I wouldn't mind that. In a perfect world, Will Campbell would still be on the board. They go offensive line. Conceivably, they could go Mimbu with this pick as well, but I do think it's an offensive player, unless, of course, they rightly value Mason Graham as one of the 3 blue chips in the draft. Genty at 6, that's chalk. He's going to the Raiders if he falls. A team may trade up to 5 if they're desperate to get him. That'd be a very un-Cowboys-like move, but I'd love the Cowboys to do it, but we don't need to drone on about it. Genty is going 6, no later. And I'd be shocked, frankly, if the Raiders went in any different direction.
Yeah, with adding a quarterback in the offseason, I don't think they'd go a Mason Graham or any of the edge rushers right here. No one has that extremely high-end pass rush upside at 6, and Genti has that home run ability to change the Raiders' offense like Brock Bowers did somewhat last year, albeit he didn't have a great
I don't think
quarterback
they changed it in
throwing
the right direction. I think the Raiders' offense was technically worse in 2024 than it was in 2023.
Well, he broke all the records, so maybe with a better quarterback, better run game, better talent around him, they can take that next step. 7 overall, the Jets. PFF has their biggest need here as quarterback, but they're certainly not going quarterback. Offensive skill positions, they got Garrett Wilson, they got Breece Hall, and then not much else. They don't really have a tight end. They don't really have another receiver to complement Garrett Wilson unless you're for some reason in love with what Allen Lazard still offers. And then there's Mason Graham still on the board here at 7. You could pair him with Quinnen Williams. So I think there's a few intriguing options the Jets have to go with here. I don't think they're going to be able to resist drafting Mason Graham. That is the direction I am going to go in, because with Justin Fields on the team, Garrett Wilson, you have a good run game. I think they're going to look to build through the trenches with Aaron Glenn as their head coach.
Yeah, there's going to be much weeping and gnashing of teeth in Charlotte because Mason Graham was going to be able to save their defense. Unfortunately, that is no longer the case. He is off the board. They are out of luck there. But I think they panic pick here. I think they roll with another guy they have graded highly, a guy who can help save their front 7, who was arguably the worst in football last year, someone who has a decent pass rush bag and whose run defense can come a long way given his extremely substantial physical tools. I think the Panthers, in response to Graham going right there, grabbed Kenneth Grant, his teammate at Michigan. A little bit of a reach, but if he manifests athletically, that is a great pick. This is a man cut out of the Dexter Lawrence mold.
No Walter Nolan there?
No Walter Nolan. Not a good run defender and not as athletically gifted as Grant.
With the Panthers, it's going to be wide receiver or someone on defense, any position. They just need to get more talented
I
all
don't
over
think
the
it's going to
place.
be wide receiver. Again, I've expressed in previous videos, Leggett has to figure it out or he's just not going to, and they'll address it in free agency. They're not going to smoke an early pick on a guy like Tedero McMillan when they've got this dysfunctional culture already existing. They're doing everything in their power to get rid of. They don't need someone who's not interested in watching film in that build.
Now with the Saints, this is a potential Shedeur Sanders landing spot. Will they go in the quarterback direction with the giant question mark next to Derek Carr? Is he actually going to have offseason surgery? Will he be done and completely out for the season? I think that is something that is going to be developing storyline as we get even closer to the draft. We are recording this on Monday. The first round of the draft is on Thursday. Is that someone they're targeting? Yes, potentially, but they need talent all over the place. Do they go in a Walter Nolan direction? Do they go Tedero McMillan? They have Chris Olave, but Chris Olave has struggled mightily with concussions. Tight end room, not great. They could use offensive line. So the Saints need basically everything. Is it going to be quarterback?
Yes, it is. If it gets to this point and Shedeur Sanders is still on the board at 9, he's going off here.
If you let me finish, I was going to agree with you and say, for the sake of this, based off the information we have currently, not a ton has been completely out about Derek Carr and the definition of the status of his shoulder. So I am going to go with that, and I think opinions on that will change drastically come draft night.
You've been banding around about Shedeur Sanders not being a first-round quarterback for a majority of the offseason, and now I'm a little bit upset that the Saints have given you an out because you can say, oh, well, Derek Carr is going to be injured. I'd be a little bit surprised if Shedeur Sanders was still on the board for 9. He was always going to be a first-round pick, but if the Carr injury is as bad as I've been led to believe, that is as far as he will fall. He will go off the board of the Saints. Now, the Chicago Bears, interesting team. The best player listed on PFF's big board is Tedero McMillan. They're not drafting another wide receiver. They got more. They got a Dunze. They've got Cole Kmet. Maybe you think they go Tyler Warren if he's still here, but he's not. Defensively, I think that's the area of weakness. Their offense has been filled out. They're not reaching on Hampton to 10. And their defensive line was kind of a mess last year. Sweat did not live up to the contract. They've got no one who can consistently generate a pass rush. And their secondary, talented as it may be, just needs someone who can go out there and win for them. Make those balls come out half a second faster so they can force even more turnovers. Mike Green, I think, is the pick here. Now, the character concerns are a big issue, but the Bears, desperate to win. I think they will overlook that. Some character concerns were overlooked in Detroit at points. And since Ben Johnson is cut from that tree, or fell from that tree, I think he will be willing to do the same for a super talented player. A player who undoubtedly would have been off the board sooner if not for those issues.
I agree that I think the Bears are going to go in a pass rushing direction unless Ashton Jeanty happens to somehow make it to 10. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if he makes it past the Raiders, someone will probably trade up. And then it'll come down to what do the Bears value more? Will it be James Pierce's production? Will it be what Mike Green's production also with his athletic upside while ignoring some of the red flags? Will be Jalen Walker's athletic upside? I think there's a lot of directions, and it'll be dependent on what teams value more when they're looking for developing a young edge rusher. At number 11, I think this is a super easy pick. I'm going with Armand Membu. I do not see the 49ers passing on the ability to draft a high-end offensive lineman to help improve their run game, help protect Brock Purdy, build towards the future, and get someone that can hopefully eventually replace Trent Williams.
Yeah, they like their offensive freaks on the line, or they like their athletic freaks on the offensive line in San Francisco. We got Pooney last year, Trent Williams, one of the more athletic tackles, even though Father Time has slowed him down. I don't mind that pick. I'd go Banks over Membu, but hey. At number 12, we've got the Dallas Cowboys, who may, in other worlds, trade up to number 5 and get Ashton Jeanty. I think the need is still there. I think the need is present. And I think Jerry Jones says, you know what, screw it. I'm not drafting no stinking defensive lineman. I'm not doing the logical thing and waiting until day 2 to get my running back. No, I want my big, flashy offensive star out of the great state of North Carolina, which is why Omarion Hampton is going off the board at 12 for me. Is it a reach? Maybe. If Hampton lives up to his athletic profile and his college production, it will not be. No one's going to be complaining about that pick if he runs for 1,200, 1,300 yards as a rookie. And behind that Cowboys offensive line, I think that's a real possibility. Should they go defense? Maybe. But it's hard to predict what the Cowboys are going to do. And no one will say no to a little bit of flash in that building.
I agree. I think Omarion Hampton's on the board, Ashton Jeanty. They are targeting the top 2 running backs with their first-round pick. They need to add some juice and talent to the offensive side of the ball. They have CeeDee Lamb, they have Jake Ferguson, and that's really about it from an offensive, high-end production perspective. At 13, we have the Miami Dolphins. There is the Jalen Ramsey getting traded, or rumors out there. That can happen within the next 2 days, 4 draft picks, and then Will Johnson would be even more significantly on the board here for them. But it's their offensive line. They've given Tua so much money. Tyreek Hill is not that healthy, is not as healthy as you like him to be. You want the run game to be a key component of this offense. I think they're going to go offensive line here, build depth. You had Armstead retire in the offseason, and they're going to go with Kelvin Banks out of Texas.
I mean, forget Tyreek Hill's health. He may not be in the building. He may be asking for a trade. That may manifest over draft night and give the Dolphins some more first-round capital to play with, maybe more day 2 capital. I'd be surprised if anyone gave up a first for Tyreek Hill at this point in his career, but I digress. On to the Colts. I don't disagree with the pick too much. Banks is the best lineman left available unless you are very high on Booker. On to the Colts. And the popular pick would be say, oh, Colston Loveland, they need a tight end, yada, yada, yada. They got 3 good pass catchers. They've got a solid running game. And if they're going to get a tight end, it's going to be Tyler Warren, who's more of an inline guy who can block for Jonathan Taylor. I don't think they want to add a slot tight end who can't go in there and do the dirty work more like Cox is currently doing for him. So what are the other needs? Offensive line, stripped a little bit in free agency, but I think the edge and the defensive line is where you really want to start looking here for the Colts. And considering what's available, I think they go ahead and take a swing on James Pierce Jr. Sure, there's the character concerns, coachability, whatever. The Colts do not care about that sort of thing in their building. They don't care if you're late for meetings. They don't care if you're non-responsive. They just want talent, they want athleticism, and they want production. And James Pierce has that in spades. So they take a the Colts take a risk. They pick Pierce, and hopefully it all works out.
I'm kind of surprised the 2 edges that have come off are the players that have for us already, with it being James Pierce, Mike Green. We don't care about character concerns.
Well, do you think the Bears care about character concerns? Do you think the Colts care about character concerns?
The Colts really only care about having high-end elite athletes when you look at how they draft relative to RAS scores.
I mean, James Pierce is a good RAS score, right? I mean, should I have reached for one of the Texas A&M guys?
Maybe it's Jalen Walker, who, with my next pick, I am going to go with Jalen Walker to the Atlanta Falcons, and he has been somewhat of a polarizing prospect. Some people think he's going to go at the back end of the first round. Some people think he's going to go in the top 10. Wildly athletic, dynamic with the different things he's capable of doing, and at a certain point, this Falcons team, they have have to draft defense. They have to draft someone who can generate a pass rush. And they're at some point you'd think they'd have to draft one of the hometown guys and get someone from the NFL factory that is Georgia football.
You'd think so, but it's the Falcons, so you never really know. Honestly, I would have gotten Michael Williams here just because they don't need the versatility quite like other people might. Michael Williams is a more refined, better pass rusher right now. Speaking of that, I think Jalen Walker would have been the perfect fit for the Arizona Cardinals here. The defensive scheme they run have guys coming in from all different angles, various blitzes, third down packages, all that, but they're not going to turn their nose up at Michael Williams either. They've plumbed that SEC mine a few times. They've got some really talented players from there, and I see no reason they won't continue to do that. Michael Williams, tremendous athlete, better, more refined day one player than Walker, has a set position, which I think is a big thing in the NFL. The Cardinals have been burned previously with guys like Isaiah Simmons not quite being able to play 3 or 4 different positions at once, and they need a pass rush. So that's who I got the Cardinals picking.
You don't think they're going to go with Josh Simmons if he's on the board?
Didn't want to make the same pick I made last mock draft.
At 17, we have the Bengals. If you saw the TikTok we released about him, they are going to draft defense. They just need to add talent on that side of the ball if they want to even be close to competitive this year, or should I say competing for a Super Bowl. So I think Jahad Campbell, best linebacker on the board, offers a little bit of pass rush versatility, very good in man coverage at linebacker, gives you kind of a Swiss Army knife for that defense, and I think that's the direction they'll go in. Maybe with Walter Nolan still being here, I could also see Walter Nolan too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a fine pick. There are a lot of defensive guys of quality available. Maybe they don't think the secondary is worth bolstering up. Maybe they don't feel like reaching on Will Johnson just yet. I don't see Will Johnson falling past pick 22. Looking at the Seahawks, it's been talked to death. They need offensive line, and Ratledge has risen up a bunch over this offseason, tested well. Pretty athletic guy out of Georgia. Tyler Booker has fallen down, and the Seahawks strike me as an organization to buy into the athletic ability of guards, get them someone who is a bit more mobile, a bit more flexible, can run some outside zone stuff. I don't think it'd be the right pick. I think Tyler Booker's better, but in this case, I think the Seahawks are going Ratledge out of Georgia at 18. We're kind of getting into the range where if the guard is good enough...
You were still hating on Gray Zabel.
Gray Zabel, what position does Gray Zabel play?
He's going to play guard.
Are you sure?
In the NFL.
Is he going to be a center? Might be a backup tackle. Come on, man. You have no idea what you're talking about with Gray Zabel, because PFF has him listed highly here. You are buying into that.
Not just
Get
PFF.
real. I don't care what anyone else says. They're wrong. I'm sure he'll be a fine NFL player, not worth a first-round pick.
So you're going Tate Ratledge.
Yes.
We're zigging and zagging here. At number 19, the Buccaneers. They could improve in a few different areas with Tedro McMillan still on the board. Do they look to add a young, talented wide receiver who some have, compared to Mike Evans, although that is a big comparison to make with the way he plays? That is an option there. There's also still Will Johnson on the board, and I think I would go Will Johnson with him still being there. Add a potentially elite lockdown corner to the outside. It's kind of surprising we've had McMillan fall, Will Johnson fall, although we've had Ratledge get drafted before them.
In the fall with Tedro McMillan, it stops here. Bo Nix needs everything he can get. He needs the best offensive line. He needs the best receiving room. He needs a really high-level running back, which they'll be addressing in the second round, to be remotely functional at the NFL level. I think Tedro McMillan fills a need the Broncos have. Not quite the same archetype as the guys they've already got on the team. I think he'll be productive in the NFL. He can certainly be productive after the catch. And we all know Bo Nix dinks and dunks. McMillan will catch a slant, get a little drag route going, and then make some noise. Good fit for the Broncos, good fit for a Sean Payton offense, and more help for a desperately needy Bo Nix.
With him on the board, much like Will Johnson, I think the Broncos would not be able to pass on him. 21 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need a quarterback still. Is this where Jackson Dart comes off the board? They're
drafting Milroe before they draft Dart, I guarantee you.
Do they bet on the athletic potential of Milroe? Who knows? They got Mason Rudolph right now. I feel like for whatever reason, Mike Tomlin seems to be comfortable with Rudolph. I think with Shador not on the board, they'd be willing to pass on a quarterback here, wait until day 2 to fill that young quarterback need. I think they are going to look to add someone to their defense. Maybe they look to bolster their offensive line on the interior, add some youth and talent there. They did lose Dan Moore in the offseason. I think they're going to go Walter Nolan here. Cameron Hayward is only getting older. You're going to need some youth there eventually. The fact he is still there adds to their defensive line rotation, makes them deeper, younger, and more athletic.
I mean, it's a fine pick. Best defensive player available according to PFF, but can you really trust those folks over there at the Football Network or Football Focus? The Football Fiasco, the Football Clown Show, as I like to call them. Colston Loveland, you are a Charger. He's not quite the Jim Harbaugh archetype. He's not an inline guy. Can't go dig out a defensive end if he is needed to, if he needs to. But look, it's Ladd McConkey. It's Quentin Johnson. It's not much else. Herbert needs help. They'd like to pass the ball more. They'd like to capitalize on the supreme talent that Jay Herbo is. And Harbaugh's got familiarity with Loveland. It makes sense. He is going to do crazy, crazy things with the ball in his hands before the ball gets to his hands. He may challenge our pal Brock Bowers for the rookie tight end receiving yards record. We'll have to wait and see, but good pick, good fit. Chargers are very happy there.
It's Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, 1 and 2 on their board. We know Tyler Warren, they're not going to have the opportunity to draft Tyler Warren. They'll have the opportunity, hopefully, to draft Colston Loveland. And if he's not there, maybe they're looking in the direction of a wide receiver, which at 23, do the Packers finally draft a wide receiver in the first round, or do they draft someone in the trenches like they've done in previous years?
Is that a rhetorical question? Because I'll tell you the answer is no on the wide receiver.
Well, because of how our draft has fallen and we've only had Tedrow McMillan come off the board, I think that is where the run sort of starts.
No respect for Travis Hunter. You saying he can't play wide receiver in the NFL, Tristan?
Well, besides Travis Hunter, who's playing multiple positions. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden. I think he gives them elite speed on the outside. He's going to hopefully be healthier than Christian Watson has been for them, and gives them just another receiving threat for Jordan Love to throw to.
Yeah, because that's what the Packers totally need. Fourth wide receiver, a fifth, a sixth, however many wide receivers they've got in that room who are young and hungry targets. Sure, let's add in another. What's the worst that could happen? The Minnesota Vikings now get Malachi Starks, which I'm overjoyed by. He's one of the best players, I'd say top 5, certainly top 10 prospect in the draft. Plays safety, which is a bit inconvenient, but Harrison Smith is looking to retire soon. Brian Flores can use multiple defensive backs. Starks can hold up in man coverage if he needs to, as long as he's not matched up with Ryan Williams. It is a great pick for the Vikings. You're going to get a whole lot of value out of that. And the safeties don't matter crowd clearly did not pay attention to what Brian Branch did for Detroit last year.
I agree. I think the Vikings, they'll go highest graded DB left on their board. Malachi Starks, excellent safety, will be able to learn from and pair with Harrison Smith, who's heading into year 14. At pick 25, we have the Texans, and I'm going to go with Josh Simmons here. They traded away Tunsil. Josh Simmons looked great and healthy at his pro day, potentially could have been a top 10 pick if he played all of 2024, and the Texans are going to jump at the opportunity to add talent to their offensive line.
Yeah, Simmons, Carly Booker, whoever you want to say is the best offensive lineman available at this pick, the Texans will be taking them. Not much of a mystery there. The Rams, gets a little bit interesting here. I don't think there's a set need for this team. Sure, they could use another wide receiver 3/tight end, someone who can catch passes in addition to Devonta Adams and Puka, but that's not pressing. The secondary isn't great, sure, but I don't think it's horrible. The front seven's fine. The O-line could use a little work, but I don't think there's a tackle worth the first-round pick left on the board. I think they go best player available. Best defensive back in the country, according to some last year. Jahdae Barron flies off the board here at pick 26. Rams are pretty happy about that. Defense, which is young and good, just keeps getting younger and better. They could conceivably beat the Eagles in the playoffs. I got faith this team could make some noise. Not beating the Vikings if it comes down to it. They're forced to play J.J. McCarthy, the man who can sling over the middle, the opposite of Sam Darnold, but maybe they won't draw that matchup.
I agree. The Rams are in a position where they can take a few different positions. I like the idea of continuing to add to the talent they have on the defensive side of the ball, improve that secondary, and moving on to the Ravens. Like a lot of these teams now we're going to be picking for at the back end of the first round, they're just going to be drafting the best player available who maybe can add the most production to their team right now rather than drafting for the long-term future in order for them to potentially capitalize on a Super Bowl window. For the Ravens, I'm going to have them going with Donovan Ezeraku, continue to improve their pass rush. Kyle Van Noy not getting any younger, one of their leading pass rushers last year, and with this pick, they add some depth and someone who was highly productive last year in college.
Clearly, you were listening to me when I talked about the Ravens' biggest need last week, a very admirable pick. Their run defense is just fine. They do not need to worry about adding pieces to bolster that side of the ball, but they've got no one who can win one-on-one in pass rush. Ezraku's bendy. He's quick, undersized, but hey, who really cares about that? He can get after quarterbacks, so I like that pick. Lions. When other teams zig, the Lions zag, so I'm now going to be looking for the best player available, someone who will not be regarded that highly by many. And I'll throw in Landon Jackson as that pick. Big physical freak, similar athletic profile to J.J. Watt when it comes to his vertical and his broad jump. Tall dude, long arms, heavy guy, will probably play around 280, 290. Will stuff the run. Quality defensive player. People will freak out about it on draft night because he's not bendy, and that appears to be the word of the day for defensive ends in this draft, but he will be great next to Aiden Hutchinson. You will not be able to run outside on the Detroit Lions.
Even over Shamar Stewart?
Why would I pick Shamar Stewart? I think Landon Jackson's better than him. I think Landon Jackson's one of the better defensive ends in the draft, and based off his alopecia, he has fallen down because people can't quite make up their minds about him. He's being judged arbitrarily by a genetic condition, which has no impact on his football ability. The NFL is not that progressive.
Whatever you want. The Commanders at pick 29. I don't think they'll really be looking in the cornerback direction because they traded for Marshawn Lattimore. Hit on Mikey Sanders still last year. Edge feels like a big need for them. I don't know why it has running back listed as a need here.
Not much faith in Brian Robinson, apparently, or Cam Akers.
I mean, Brian Robinson hasn't been healthy, but they wouldn't be going running back here. Guard, potentially, maybe it's a Gray Zabel or Tyler Booker who can slide in on the interior of that offensive line. I think they'd be looking more towards defense. Dan Quinn is their head coach. He took a massive step last year with the defense. Heading into year 2, they're going to want to add more talent there. And with guys, for the sake of this, we're going with Shamar Stewart. I think it could be an Xavier Watts or a safety there. Maybe offensive line, but for the sake of this, I'm going with, they're going to bet on the athletic potential of Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the pick one way or the other. The Texas A&M edges are mocked to go around this point. Maybe if you're super high on Stewart, you have him going top 15. I personally don't see that. Buffalo Bills, they're in the position where they need someone who can win on the outside one-on-one in pass rush reps. I think they're a big candidate to trade up if they're in this position. Get one of the higher end, better regarded guys. Landon Jackson off the board, not great for them. Don't really need offensive line help, but they could use some help in the secondary. Trey Amos is looking like an attractive pick here. If they're lower on the remaining A&M edge than everyone else, they may pull a cornerback. Amos, wildly talented guy, played in the SEC, matched up against NFL wide receivers a ton. I think he's a sneaky pick, slides in there at the end of the first round. Best defensive player available, arguably so, sure. At this point, we're just throwing darts at bull.
Do you think the Benjamin Morrison's, not this past year, obviously, because he was hurt the year prior, do you think that would
didn't I mock him going here in the previous mock draft? I'm trying to spice things up a little bit, Tristan. Morrison
I don't remember who
candidate,
you drafted 3 weeks ago.
It's either Benjamin Morrison or Xavier Watts. I had one of those two. Both of those guys could be first-round talents. The reason Watts isn't is because he's a safety. What can you do?
At 31, with the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't believe that they're going to look anywhere outside of offensive line unless all of the first-round graded talents are off the board at 31 because they just go early in the first round if the team's trying to beef up the trenches. Here, Josh Connerly is still on the board. They're going to look to add they're going to look to add an offensive tackle talent. I don't care they signed the 49ers back up for less than $20 million a year. They're going to build that offensive line.
So you give me all this crap about not being high on Gray Zabel, and then we've got the perfect opportunity to pick Gray Zabel. You say, no, actually, I'll go with the guy who isn't being mocked as a first-round pick out of Oregon instead of him.
Josh Connerly is being mocked as a first-round pick by people, and I think he offers more potential as a tackle than Zabel does, who's being more widely regarded as a guard.
Soft hands. Anyway, finally, I could end the draft by picking a running back to the Eagles. I think that is a sneaky need for him. But since I've sung his praises and since that interior offensive line has been stripped down a little bit in free agency, I'll go ahead and say Tyler Booker goes off the board here at 32 to the Eagles. You can never get too deep on the offensive line. They are one injury away to an older player from being in trouble, and Booker helps solve those needs. So I think he's the best player left on the board. I'll go him. Conceivably could be anyone. Howie Roseman, let's see if there are any Georgia players left. No, we got all the Georgia players, so I think we're good.
Well,
Nazir Stackhouse, actually, still on the board, in play.
With there being the receivers on the board that are still on the board, Luther Burden, Egbuka, And the rumors surrounding the A.J. Brown wanting a trade, Jahan Dotson being their not super overly productive wide receiver 3, do they snag a highly talented rookie wide receiver in the first round? Potentially. I think the
No, they
potential's
don't.
there.
Here's what happens with that, okay? You're going to need to walk with me. Travis Hunter goes off the board at second. Cam Ward, obviously the first overall pick. The Giants do not want Abdul Carter and need the quarterback. So they say, okay, sure, whatever. Shedeur Sanders, save our poverty franchise. Who knows how that'll turn out. Abdul Carter is sitting there at 4. And I know I said the Patriots would be fine at wide receiver because they got Stephon Diggs. But the Eagles are going to pick up that phone and say, hey, we would like Abdul Carter in New England. We will give you A.J. Brown, get him out of town, get him on a bad team where he can just be the sole focus of attention. Let him argue with Stephon Diggs in the wide receiver room. That'll be fun. We'll send you that. We'll send you a first-round pick. We'll send you a day 2 pick next year's draft for that 4th overall pick. And the Patriots say, send him over. So Abdul Carter goes on the board to the Eagles and then just mercilessly sacks Shedeur Sanders 15 times over the course of the 3 years Sanders is a starter in New York. I can't wait.
It's a believable scenario, believe it or not.
I can't wait.
That has been our final accurate mock draft. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. What is your mock draft looking like? Where will Shedeur Sanders get drafted? Will the Browns take a quarterback? Will the Browns or Giants trade back up into the first round to take a quarterback? Let us know what you think. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you in the next one.